As we've said many times, and I think we've understood by now, we are made mostly of habits, or rather, in front of choices, reactions that we have to various situations, the way we act in our daily lives, most of that is conditioned by our habits. There's a small part that comes that's directed, let's say, from our own knowledge, our intention, our ideas, but very, but a great part, a very important part, is influenced by by our habits, and that's why it's not easy to make changes. And when we say, "Oh, I recognize that this isn't good for me, and I shouldn't be like this, and I should change this habit," saying it is relatively easy, but doing it, it's not. We have this strange idea that once we've understood, it's done. When actually, in practice, we see it's not. I- in Italian, there's this saying between between doing be- um, between understanding and doing. There's an ocean between, because we're made up of habits. So we could say from understanding and actually putting into practice, we could say the same thing. So so changes are possible. They exist. Actually, it's not im- it's impossible to live anything without changing. We are in constant change. But what happens is the direction, the way that the things transform, they're a direct consequence of the interactions that come. So if I have a certain habit and I keep repeating that habit, then I transform, but I'm becoming more and more rigid. This process is not static. But the more I do something, the more I get used to it, the more I reinforce that habit. And the experience that most of us have is that as the years go by, it becomes harder and harder to change our habits. It's not easy. I mean, the harder and as the years go by, the more rigid we become. Our habits become more solid, we can say. Even if we look from a neurological point of view, what happens is the same thing. Our brain, the younger we are, as our brain is shaping, the older we get, the more rigid our brain becomes. I mean, many things have been established, we can say, but this doesn't mean that there isn't the possibility to change, to go into a different direction, because we start from that fundamental rule that wherever there's interaction, there is transformation. So the fundamental question is, how am I interacting? What kind of interactions am I having, and what kind of change are they bringing? What's hard for us is that very often we live in a state where we want immediate results. We have less and less patience because we're used to living in a world where almost everything is immediate. And this, even from a point of view, a psychological, even a chemical point of view, I'm talking about something that goes a little bit outside my field of knowledge. But in this process of when we're able to get something immediately, we create a state where our system of compensation is what happens is it's hard, you know. I work hard, I get something that I really enjoy. So am I up for working hard again to get that thing? Yes, because I have that memory of how much pleasure I got. But what happens if I'm able to get that same pleasure without working for it? Am I going to put energy into getting it? No. So let's say we put in front of ourselves something that we like. Imagine something that you like. Or we can even see different things that bring that same level of pleasure. One you have right in front of you. You don't need to put any energy into it. And the other one you have to reach out 10 meters for. The other one, instead, you need to walk 10 kilometers to get it. Which one will you take? You'll take the one that's closest to you. And if every time you're able to take that one that's close, well, let's say that that one that's close to you is is not there, and there's only the one that's 10 kilometers away. We say, well, why would I work that hard to get what I'm used to having just right in front of me? So the more we're able to get this pleasure without working for it, then the the less will be our effort to get to get other objects of pleasure, and the weaker we become because we're not used to facing hard work or difficulties. This isn't I don't want to get too much into this. This is not what I wanted to talk about today. But what happens is to make a greater change in our habits, we need to create the opposite, and we need to diminish those habits that aren't positive. How do we say it's if I want to generate an opposite habit, it's not it's not enough to just do the opposite. Um, but I need to put energy into doing something that will actually bring bring benefits. And so habits are, we can say, in three categories. We have physical habits that come from how we eat, how we sleep. These physical actions that we do connected to our senses. We have verbal habits, the way we speak, and we have mental habits. In our mental habits, is the way we see the world, the emotional reactions to things, everything that has to do with our inner reality that comes, let's say, naturally, spontaneously. We don't need to construct those inner habits. And in front of that, what happens is, if we look at Buddhist teachings, somehow, because we don't have this habit of directing ourselves with awareness, somehow we've created, how can I say, the ceremonies, rituals are not that's not the right word, but it's something like, something that we do daily, almost as a ritual. So every day you need to do the seven limb prayer, for example. So what are in the seven limb prayers? We need to do prostrations, offerings, to openly admit our mistakes, rejoice for virtuous actions, etc. But at a certain point, the problem is, what that was something to create a new habit, then has just become a sort of ritual. Oh, because I'm Buddhist, every day I need to openly admit my mistakes and rejoice. So I openly admit all of my errors committed, and I rejoice for all virtuous actions. Okay, I'm done. okay, I recited something, but what's important, what's fundamental for us is have a clear direction and remind ourselves, and keep in mind what we want. That's at the beginning, we prostrate. It means that we pay homage to to the direction we want to go. And when I pay homage to Buddha or to my guru, it's not that I'm doing, it's not adulating, I'm, it's an act where I'm recognizing that Buddha is what I want to become, that my guru is an example of who I want to be. And so there's a way to to pick up our objectives and and set our objective clear again. So I'm putting energy into that direction. I'm giving value to the path, that path. And this is fundamental because we need to be careful. We need to be careful that we don't live our life just to survive, where we spend our days resolving problems, obtaining pleasures, having a little fun, and somehow the day goes by. Instead, it's important for us to keep a direction, not just of thought, but a direction of what I want to become, where I want to go. And we've spoken about this many, many times. I'm not going to repeat everything. It's not the time. But once we have once we have this clarity of where we want to go, who I want to become, then we need to remember it constantly. We need to remind ourselves of this because you're not used to having this objective. We need to constantly regenerate our motivation. Remember what I want. Do I want a comfortable samsara or do I want to get out of this state of suffering? We need to remind ourselves, remember the direction. And what's fundamental is that as we go on day after day, moment after moment, we need to look back on what we have done and redirect ourselves. Because sometimes when we talk about, using, the confession, when we say the word confession, very often we we it's heavily influenced from the Christian the Christian tradition, and that can create some kind of confusions. That's why I prefer to use the terms openly admit our errors. But this aside, it's not that I need to openly admit my errors or confess, if we want to use this term, because if I don't, then there's bad karma, or I'll end up in hell because I'm not a good Buddhist if I don't do so. No, I'm doing this because I want to transform myself. And how can I transform myself in one direction if I keep doing the things that take me into the opposite direction? How can I reach a state of peace, of balance, of satisfaction, of love? Go go out and go towards this direction of getting out of samsara when I keep repeating the same things that go in the opposite direction. But someone might say to me, "Oh, Lama, I'm sorry, but it's stronger than I am. I mean, those stupid things that I do, I'd like to not do them, but it's just stronger than I am." You you you're right, and my stupid things are stronger than me too, in the sense that these are not things that we simply just need to understand to not do them anymore. And that's why daily we need to look back at what we've done physically, verbally, mentally, and recognize, okay, this is something positive. It's wonderful that I was able to do this. I was able to say this in this way. And then we need to rejoice. We need to celebrate that. Um, the traditional term is to rejoice. Almost for us, maybe it's even easier to use the word to celebrate. At the end of the day, what are the things that we need that we can celebrate? What are the things that went well? Wow, how wonderful. Normally I would have gotten angry in such a situation, but I didn't. How wonderful. Or maybe I was in a situation that normally would bring me to be taken by desire, but I was able to hold back. I was able to act with compassion, or I respected my body by doing what was good for me instead of what I like. I mean, there are thousands of things, but it's important to be able to see the positive things. Mm, yeah, even the we can call positive habits, and or also those that are not yet habits but that we were able to do. We should rejoice, we should celebrate those, and once we've celebrated, then we need to also look at what didn't go so well physically, verbally, mentally, one at a time. What are the things that didn't go well? And when we see those, we say, oh, okay, I recognize that my way of speaking today did not bring positive fruits because I'm repeating a habit of speaking with aggression or lying, and I see that this is not positive. It's not good for me, and I don't want to do it anymore. I recognize that it was an error, and here we're not getting into a sense of guilt. Oh, I'm so ugly. I'm so bad. I did that. I deserve to be punished and to suffer for what. No, it has nothing to do with any of this. It's about wanting to be well. And this, this habit instead um, does the opposite for me and for others. It's bad for me. It's harmful for me. And I need to recognize, first of all, this awareness that this way of speaking is not good for me, not good for others, and I don't want to repeat it anymore. I recognize that today I spoke like that. I don't want to speak like that anymore. And I take the commitment to not do it anymore. Why do I take a commitment to not do it anymore? Because we human beings, and not just human beings, I, th- I think all sentient beings, even though I don't know the reality of all sentient beings, but I think that this rule can apply to all sentient beings. We do what we do based on three types of objectives. We don't do practically anything if there aren't one of these three forces. The first one is a positive incentive. I do this because it's good for me, because there's something good in it, or I receive something good. There's some kind of reward. The second incentive, I do that thing because if I don't, then I'm doing something harmful to myself. So I do an action to avoid something negative. The first one is to get something positive, the second one is to avoid something negative. And the third incentive is for a moral question. Because I took this commitment, because it's right to do like this. For example, I'm driving. I should respect the speed limit. In, in the first case, I say I want to respect the speed limit because I want to save gas, and I get a kind of reward by respecting the speed limit. I save money. There's something positive in exchange. So, or maybe I respect the speed limit because I don't want to get a ticket. I do that to avoid something negative. And then the third case, I respect the speed limit because I'm a good citizen. I'm someone who respects the rules. So it's a moral question. beyond these three incentives, from what I see, I I don't see why we do things or stop doing others. So we need to use the rules of the game. And when I see a behavior of my own that is not positive, if I generate that commitment to not wanting to continue that habit, so so with that commitment, I'm generating that moral basis to help me not do it. And then when I recognize also if I do this thing, i- if I do this thing, it brings this negative result. And if I avoid doing this thing, it brings this positive result. There are also two other bases to help us make that change. And then we should also have some kind of basis to remind ourselves, like putting on a little bracelet or a color, um, maybe the color of your clothes or a piece of jewelry. Do something. Okay, I should not speak in this way. Today, I take the commitment to not speak in that way, but how can I remember to do that? Okay, so I'll put my watch on the opposite wrist. Each one needs to think for himself, but I do something to remind myself of the commitment. And see, we're strange because sometimes we pretend that we've forgotten, but we know that we haven't forgotten. But given that doing in this way, that requires a great effort, we pretend that we've forgotten. So every and then and then but then we say to ourselves, oh, okay, well, then afterwards I can just openly admit my errors. This has happened to me with medicine. I mean, I don't know why, but um, there was a time when I just had a great aversion to taking anything that's even remotely seemed like medicine. I'm much better now, but I do recognize that either I forget, there's sometimes I really forget taking medicine, but there are also moments where I haven't really forgotten, but maybe just kind of pretend that I've forgotten. Like the thought comes, but then I just leave it there in the corner. I don't let it um, r- really openly come out. But we're really fooling ourselves. We fool ourselves thinking that we can fool ourselves. I don't know if that's clear. We can't fool ourselves, but we think that we are able to do it somehow. Instead, it's fundamental for us to recognize what is good for me. Not everything all at once, just one piece at a time. Just if we really, we take one specific habit, physical, verbal, or mental. We start with the physical to get to the mental. Don't try right away to change a mental habit. You won't be able. First, we start with the more gross level to get to the more subtle. So first, a physical, then verbal, then mental habits. So I just take one habit. Let's use the example also of a verbal habit. And I take the commitment for 1 week every day. I renew that commitment to to avoid speaking in this negative manner. And I remember that every day I direct myself in that way. I put effort into it. Um, I mean, it takes effort because it doesn't come spontaneously. What can you do in a week's time? I mean, a week with awareness, lived with awareness, I think one can do tremendous amount of progress. The problem is we do very little in a week because in our 7 days, our moments of awareness all added up together don't even make one moment. So to have awareness about everything is tiresome. We were not able, just forget it. But that's why we take one habit, just one habit, and take the awareness of that one thing. I don't want to treat the people that I live with daily in an aggressive manner. Why? I have this difficulty. I take this commitment. Um, but when that desire comes, I just bite my tongue. I go and do something else. This reminds me in a teaching of Lamrim, where there's this commitment to not lie. The example is given. You're in the middle of the woods, and you have this commitment to not lie. At a certain point, you see a rabbit go by or another animal, and then a hunter comes, someone that wants to kill that animal with the hunter's looking and the hunter asks you, did you see the rabbit? What do you do? If you say yes, he'll ask you, where did it go? And then if you say, I won't tell you, then that becomes a problem, because then a conflict can arise. Instead, if you say, yes, I saw him, and you tell them the opposite direction, you're lying. And if you don't, if you say no, you're also lying. So a very practical piece of advice is given. It's kind of, if it makes me laugh. So, if the hunter says, where did the animal go? You say, oh, what a beautiful day it is today. You know, you change the subject. But what you can do is, when we see that we're about to get into some dynamic, we need to just get out of that context. You can pretend to be a little bit the silly one, like you haven't understood. And but for that, and what's important is that you take that commitment, that for what that 1 week you say, I'm going to work on this thing. I mean, you need the opposite as well. If we're able gradually during the day, ideally, we should regenerate this awareness and redirect it 6 times a day. When I always remember Lama Lawan when I talk about this. Many of you knew him. Lama Lawan was this Lama doctor, wonderful, wonderful doctor who lived in Milan, and he would spend days watching. He liked watching TV, and he would watch the Arab channels that showed all the prayers, and he would spend just his hours watching all the devotees in Mecca, and he would say, "See how good they are. I mean, if we Buddhists were able to do like them, I mean, 5 times a day, 5 times a day to pray like them. Instead, you see how we do." And because in the Buddhist tradition, it was said that within the span of the 24 hours, there are these moments of energetic change. Actually, the natural cycle of the day and night of nature. And in those moments of energetic change, we become more susceptible to emotional change. And so, in those moments, we need to be very careful to not fall into the trap of bad habits, even more so in those times than other times of the day. So at noon, at dawn, at dusk, and it's complicated because it's not a question of time on our watch. We're talking about the sun and nature, so we can't even talk about a precise time. It has to do with the natural cycles of the sun. But dawn, noon, dusk, midnight, these are key moments during the day. These are moments where we can have these changes, these great changes. And in those moments of energetic change, if one could look at one's motivation, regenerate one's motivation, redirect oneself in those moments, then one is sure to stay on the path. Like if I'm driving, for example, I need to pay more attention when there's a fork in the road. When the road is just straight, and there's no other place to go, then my direction is on a certain level. But then if I have, you know, if I have, you know, three roads, a fork in the road of three different possibilities. At that point, I need to have more, pay more attention. And in those moments, one should really look back, should should ask oneself, why am I here? What is it that I want to do? Look at one's motivation and one's direction. If you were able to do that for 6 times a day, let's say every 2 hours even, if every 2 hours we asked ourselves, who do I want to be? What am I doing? Remember that our day should not be lived as an end in and of itself, but as as a tool. And so I take refuge. It's not as a formality. I remember what I want, where I'm going, what I want to be, and what I need to do to get there. In these last 2 hours, how did they go? Okay, well, I'm doing well. Let's keep that direction. No, I think we're going in a direction that's not so favorable. Let's adjust. How much time do you need to do something like this? 30 seconds? A minute? When you have a little bit of familiarity with the experience. Okay. 5 minutes is the very most. Till, so do it every 2 hours. Okay, maybe every 3 hours. That will change your day, change your life. Because what we do often, we live our day as if it were, just a leaf in the wind. Or we could say a boat on the high sea where one doesn't have the rudder. It just would just lets go. Even the sail is just left to itself. Where will the boat go? Where will the sailboat go? Where the currents take it, where the wind takes it. And in our day, where does our boat go? We live as if we are a simple reaction to what happens around us. I react like this because this one did that, and I do like this because that happened. Instead, we need to take, we need to, take our control of our sail, take control of the rudder. Where do I want to go? And if we really were able to create this habit once a day, helps. But if we were able to do it every 2 or 3 hours, in just those few moments, and then they become seconds, just that reconnecting with our awareness. Imagine how much you'll be able to do in a day full of awareness. A week would be incredibly long. You'd be able to do so much. Imagine in in 1 year there are 52 weeks. Imagine how much you could do if you lived with awareness. If you don't live with awareness, 52 years go by and one has done nothing other than reinforce one's habits. That's every day. We need to look back, redirect. So awareness and redirection, awareness, redirection. We admit openly our mistakes, we rejoice for the positive things, and we redirect where we need to. So we celebrate, and then we look also at our actions that are not positive on a physical, verbal, and mental level. If we're able to create these habits, if you get to then you get to a certain point where it's not just every 2 hours, but then it becomes constant. This awareness is always with us. Sometimes is stronger, sometimes is a little weaker, but it's constantly with us, and it's wonderful. But before getting there, first we need to Try to generate this awareness once a day, twice a day, to get to 6 times a day when we wake up, when we go to sleep during the day. So we take advantage of these moments and redirect our life. This is what allows us to to live our life with awareness and to give a give a clear direction of who we want to be, what we want to be, because our habits speak very loudly. And what happens is sometimes when we see that we have a very strong reaction, most of the times, I've seen in these very strong reactions, we have attraction or aversion. So jealousy, anger, envy. It's not something that just that comes, from one second to the other, but it's something that builds, that constructs and then explodes. If I'm able every 2 hours to look at myself and there's there's that moment, there's something underneath that's bubbling up. If every 2 hours I'm able to n- um, if I'm able to let go of that. For example, in Tibetan, it said the fire needs to be put out when the flame is small. So the essence of what I wanted to share with you today is this. Um, I was just in the United States, and Sri Rinpoche put a lot of emphasis on this. Um, there were many aspects of the formal teachings, but in addition, he put a lot of emphasis on the importance of looking at our um, motivation, our direction, because if not, life just goes by, and then soon we'll become a baby again, and we become a child in two different ways. First, we become babies when we're old, no? Of all the old people that I know, many old people, there are very few that have this level of mental presence and awareness. There's this tendency, isn't there, for old people to become childlike, and so we become more and more an expression of our habits, and then we die, and reborn, and what do we bring with us? We bring with us our habits. For example, for myself, I've said I don't want to be reborn lazy. It's enough. It's enough in this lifetime. It's given me. I've had to put so much energy against this. So what's the only alternative to not be reborn lazy? I mean, working hard now in this life, and to do this, we need to apply antidotes daily. So we see at the end of the day, every moment, every situation that we live is where that magic happens. Every once in a while, we have this idea that life happens somewhere else, as if when that will be like this, and this will be like this, and I'll be able to do this, and I will be like this. When we're young, we have this idea that life is still to happen. And then at a certain age, we think, oh, life has already passed. When actually, what exists is our the present moment, the magic of this present moment, where this magic of being able to construct that peace within ourselves that exists in this present moment. The past and the future are lived in our mind, in the film, the movie of our mind. But now, here in this moment, where am I? And I mean, this in this present moment is where the magic happens. And this present moment is marvelous, it's magical, and it should be given the right amount of importance and worth. We need to. So we can't expect to for the world to change, for our situation around us to change, um, so that we become happy. I've seen someone at a certain point, one misses an opportunity that they weren't able to catch, and they say, "Oh, I didn't know how to give value to that situation, and now I don't have those conditions anymore." And what happens? One does the same thing. Instead of giving value to what that person has now, one continues complaining about the past that didn't go well according to them. Instead, this present moment is magical. We have everything in our hands. We can do marvelous things. But we really need to take advantage take advantage of every moment of the day, to generate bodhicitta, to direct ourselves. Because one aspect of Dharma, translated into simple words, is falling in love with and um, cultivating with tremendous passion this inner sense of peace. I mean, what's your greatest passion? Inner peace, my own and others. And at a certain point, you you work so hard on it for yourself. It's not enough. You need it also for others. It's something that needs to be cultivated and lived. Every situation, there's so much to learn. There's so much to from every situation. There's so much to use to learn. But we need to give value to our daily lives, and to what we have in front of us. And I repeat one more time, otherwise we just end up waiting for the day, and who knows when that will be. And that day never comes. Sometimes it comes, but we don't even see it, and then we're still waiting for something else. Instead, it's fundamental for us to be able to give value to this present moment. And this requires not victimizing ourselves. It requires, okay, here I am. This I like, this I don't. But where can I give the best of myself? And remember that the most important thing is not where we are, what we do, not even who we are with. I mean, these are important things. But but the essence is, how is it that we're transforming ourselves? How do we interact with everything that makes us then who we become? Just to conclude, just one last point. I've recently heard some kinds of reflections, discussions, talking about what's the function of human beings, this whole, this whole topic of artificial intelligence, saying that artificial intelligence will um, will this is saying that artificial intelligence will take over, the roles of human beings. Um, but here is we can see that the error is not about what the person is, but what the person produces. I mean, if we need to compete with any kind of a robot, I mean, a robot will do so many things better than me. But our objective is not about doing, making, it's being. This world needs beings of love, beings of peace, of joy, of stability, satisfaction, wisdom, coherence. This is what the world needs most, much more than any kind of artificial intelligence that could substitute it somehow. And I mean, what is our function in this life? Because if my function is to do and to produce, obviously something artificial can substitute me. But instead, if my objective is to be a being of joy, satisfaction, of peace, of balance, and interact with the world in that way, and that's what we need more than anything else. So have clarity about this. Of course, we need to do mm, many practical things, and that's fine. We do that, but that's not the essence of our existence. At least that's what I've understood. It's what I am, and being that, then I act in that way to the world and to the other beings, and you see that as a as an opportunity to train daily. For example, a ballet dancer or an athlete that they're able to do marvelous things. Where did that magic come from? That during just that moment of the show or the years and years of training? Where where did that magic come from? That I think from the years of training, every moment of training, that gradually, that's where that magic then came from. And the life is like that too. We can train in patience, in gratitude, in respect, in awareness, in love, generosity, etc. So that's let's try really to give value to every moment, to every day. Remember that we we should look back at what we've done with awareness and also, and then redirect ourselves towards what we want to be. And if we're able to do it just very in a very short time, you'll see, even over just a few hours, you'll see if you're able to do that just a few hours every day, you'll have great changes. If you're able to keep that awareness for a week, even more, can do it for the whole year, you can imagine. Okay.
Losan tempe drume sasum ki drove munsela tatu ne gyur chi kewa kuntu yanda lama dang dralme chiki pela longche ching sadan lamge yunte rabzo ne dorje changi kopa nyurtoba sho nimo dele tsendele nime kuyan delek shing ninsen takto delek pe kuncho sumki chingi lo kuncho sumki ngodrubo tsol kuncho sumki trashisho.
At dawn or at dusk, at night or midday, may the three jewels grant us their blessings. May they help us to obtain all realizations and sprinkle the path of our lives with various signs of auspiciousness. Have a good day, everyone. Trashidele.